All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to create a loading level. This is something that when the experience is not running, it's just on a loop, and it's just a very sparse environment at minimal, just so when people put on the headsets, they have something to focus their eyes to. This is for us, we're like, oh, we've been putting on Oculi all semester long, it's no big deal. But when you're doing VR with people, especially when you leave NYU campus and go to the world, a lot of people haven't even put on a headset. They don't even know how to use it. So oftentimes we're like a flight attendant on an aircraft. You know, we're saying your exits are here, 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 whatever. So oftentimes we're helping them, loosening the Velcro, putting it on, telling them to make it firm, telling them they can adjust the focus of the headset by firmly placing it up or down on there. They're shifting it physically. There's the interpupillary distance slider that helps them focus it. It's very important for it to be firm on their head so they're not getting sick, and that's in focus so they can see everything really well. You want them to enjoy your experience. You don't want something like a dirty screen to make them not like what you're doing. So what I often do just simply is get a vector file, like an Illustrator file, from the people who are doing designs, maybe the people who are making the website, people who did the logo, and then create a 3D object that we can then use for focus. Another important thing when you're before you start your experience is letting people know that they can move around. It's really funny. I mean, this happens less and less, but people will put on the VR headset and they'll just like watch your entire experience, and you're like, no, you can move, you can do all this kind of stuff. So again, having this opening level makes it really easy for you to say, hey, move forward, move backwards, tilt to the left. You see how that changes the way that the object is? You see how you have that parallax and stuff? That's how you can explore this experience. It's more important in sitting experiences. Standing up, it's a little easier for them to see that they do have head tracking. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this is our experience. We're going to create a loading level for the experience. I'm just going to start with a blank level, and let's go ahead and make it empty. All right. I went ahead and prepared a 3D model that I'm going to use for it with text. There's lots and lots of tutorials for all your favorite 3D packages on how to use an Illustrator file to create 3D geometry. I'm going to import. So this is just the piece we just installed called War Games. This is just their logo, right? Very simple. It's enough geometry so it renders nicely. There's not going to be much in the scene, so it's fine. Right. So I'll save and throw it into the world and import it in with its own material. I'm just going to adjust that a little bit. It's just a plain white color or a gray color, and I might want to mess around with like the roughness and specular. Promote these to parameters. I can drive those. Specular by default is actually 0.5. Oh, the ones are zeros. And then I could use the mess of color if I want to or not. All right. I'm pretty sure I want it to be fully rough to hold as much light as possible. There you go. And if you have a pawn that you're using, we're welcome to throw your pawn in. Player start could be just fine as well. And we want it to be facing the logo. All right, let's zero this out. And we'll zero that out. And move back. Great. So if I hit play now, I see nothing because I have no lights in my scene. So let's go back to lit. There we go. Now it's invisible like it would be. And maybe while I'm placing lights, I'll make it unlit so I can see what I'm doing. Their logo, the colors are actually, it's a gradient between blue and green. So what I did was do two colors behind it to backlight it. I did a point light Let's start with 0. That's a little bit behind it, and then off to the side. I don't know if you guys saw the point lights, but they can have a radius for fall off. See that? And then they can have a length as well. There we go. So I'm going to rotate this like that. And like that. Make another one. And if we go back to lit now, you see that we have it backlit. Very subtle. It's like the most Bob Ross thing I'm going to do in this class. Is like making happy little point lights. Alright, and I'm going to make them static. They're not going to move. So I want the highest quality shadows. There we go. And then I want to make one, the blue from the property. There we go. Be a little lighter. And the other one green. So I get that gradient behind them. And then if we go back to the front, we can see it's a little subtly it's being backlit green all the way to blue. Maybe they're a little much radius. And a little bit too much length. 400. Okay, evenly lit. Move it over. There we go. Cool. And then we really can't see it, so I'm gonna take one of these and put it in the front as well and just make it white, just so we can see what we're doing. Put it there and zero it out. This one I'll make white. And the whole length of the light. There we go. Maybe a little trail off right there, like a vignette. Cool. And then when I hit play, there it is, War Games. It's a little bit of blue backlighting and green backlighting. It could probably be a little bit less bright. Probably 2000. And then I'll move the pawn back a little bit because it was a little close. Cool. So they're going to be in this environment for a little while. You know, as they get comfortable. I also use this as a chance to test audio. Can you hear any audio? Is audio coming through? So, you know, put your favorite song on loop or just a room tone, something like that, so they can be like, okay, yeah, I'm getting audio, everything's working. I don't even know if I have audio in this project. Second. Audio wave. I have. That's a little annoying. That's intense. Let's go for it. Let's go for it. Let's do it. Let's double click on it. I can see that it is looping. So that's good. Throw it in the world. It's auto activated. Yes. So it'll start when the thing starts, and then I'll make it spatialized. So that they can also, we can say, hey, you know, as you turn your head to the left, you see how the audio is from a certain distance. In general, make this. In general, I like to make the beginning of the fall off happen just around the character. There. And then bring it in. And bring it down a little bit. Stop. Thank you. That was enough. Cool. So we have this like a little bit of noise. We have a little thing. So let's do our functionality. Also, I noticed that it has auto exposure, so I'm going to get rid of that real quick. Volume, post processing, and I'll lock in the auto exposure. There you go. Cool. So what we're gonna do? We want when we hit spacebar. This is a great time to use your phone, right? You can use your phone to do OSC to say, okay, we're going to start, you know, and you don't have to like go over to the computer and hit the spacebar if you don't want to. Build lights real quick. So we're going to make it so that it opens up that other level that we started off in today. Oh, I gotta get the other one back. That's cool. I must have not copied it like I thought I did. There we go. This isn't my fixed mesh that I had, so I'm just gonna make them movable so I don't have to worry about. Oh no, it was there all along. I'll make them movable so I don't bake them. Boom. Great, that's on me. So functionality, we'll do it in our level blueprint first, is that I want it when I hit spacebar, input spacebar. We're going to open up the other level. Just open level. And what's the other level called? It was called, I think it was called Big Vegas. Let's find out. I'm going to call this loading level. That's a crazy looking level. Main. It's a different level. It was whichever one we start off on. Minimal default. Okay, great. So I'm going to go to minimal default. Loading level. Back to level blueprints. Put that in there. Okay. I also want to be able to reset the orientation of the headsets. Sometimes these things drift if somebody knocks into a tracker. That can be really weird when you have, like, let's say, an installation with a few people and they're all looking in different directions for the experience. It just looks kind of funky, and you just want to be able to reset the headset orientation sometimes. So I usually do the R key for resetting orientation and position of the headset. This is just makes everything aligned. It resets where 0 is. And then I also maybe want to restart the level that I'm in. So I just load another map, which is the same map, which just restarts the map. And I'll do that L for loading level. So open level. And what level is it? It is called loading level. Let's test it out. When I hit play, L, here it kind of restarts it. Spacebar will take me somewhere. There you go, to the other level. Right? If I want to go back to loading level, though, I don't have that, right? Because I don't have it at that level. So especially if you're going to be using OSC to combine that, so you have both key presses and OSC, so you can docent your experience. Maybe we should just make a blueprint for it. I'm not going to set up the OSC stuff on the phone because we've already done that one time. I want to spend more time in today's class just working on their projects. So we'll just do the key presses, BP, but we'll call it OSC. Let's see if I can just swipe this, take it out, put it in there. Cool. So, and then to accept input, I need to allow input from me. So what I've just made now is something that can be put in all my levels, and therefore I can do all my kind of show control together. Just drop in the blueprint, save, go to minimal default, and save. And that way I'm using that functionality for everything. I come back to my level, save, and let's try again. So now spacebar goes, and then L takes us back. So now somebody is so overwhelmed with the beauty of your project they have to leave. They can't finish it. You can go ahead and reset it. You don't have to wait for it to play all the way through. All right. And I can't really show you the resetting the headsets without the headset plugged in. But the only thing I want is that the transition's kind of abrupt. And I'm going to do a quick little sequencer for fading out. I'm going to add a fade track, which starts unfaded. There's our words. There's our words. Okay. Unfaded. And then after, I don't know, I say 90 seconds. I'm going to make it, let's go to the beginning. Keyframe. And then back to the 90 seconds, 3-second transition. And then make it 1. And that'll be completely dark. And then I'm going to let it continue to play. It doesn't really matter. But with 3 seconds in, that's good. I just know from experience that this is also a curve by default. And I want to make it a linear transition. Alright. And so now, when we hit spacebar, we're actually going to be, this is not auto playing, we're actually going to start it to play. Let's see. That's the downside of doing it in an actor blueprint. Let's see. We'll take this one and put it back in the level. Great. Bring in a reference to the fading out again. And we'll hit play. There's a couple ways of timing this out. The simplest way, which will totally suffice, is just to say, when I hit the space bar, play, and then just delay for like 3 seconds. And then do it. Play, then do the thing, whatever. There's other ways of doing it. You can always say on finished, right? When it's finished, then open a level. Probably the way I would do it more now. Or you can say get playback position and say when it is equal or greater to 3 seconds. Then go ahead and trigger it. So there's a few ways of doing this. This is probably the easiest way. And if it's not precise, that's kind of why I left the sequencer to be longer than 3 seconds. That gives us a little leeway, right? It won't like pop back into white like it would if I went back to the beginning. Alright. And so that's it. Let's try it out. Spacebar, fade out, enter in our experience, right? So there you go. Ah, yes, this semester. Cool. Besides that, I mean, yeah, we can always add in the OSC and have it looking for the words. Oh, it's not in this project. We must have taught it in a different one. Yes. Repeat that. If I want to put war games. Yeah. So if you want to load it into that environment. Yeah. How would you do that? Like you want to have the 3D model inside the other environment. Yeah. You know, you can always just do this all with sublevels if you want to. So war games could be a sublevel that you're transitioning out of, and then you're starting the other level. This is just kind of a, you know, this can get kind of elaborate if you want to. You can make these loading levels have quite a lot of functionality. They can really like be your entire own environment and that kind of stuff. And it's just a way of getting it out of memory and just starting the older level from scratch. There's also the one of the wonderful things about loading levels is that you can also add splash screens. Sometimes you see with an Oculus a headset, there'll be a little hourglass that spins. You can utilize that time to actually replace the hourglass with a splash screen that like maybe shows the controller and gives instructions of how to do your functionality, right? So that's just called splash screen. Add show loading splash screen, right? Or actually it was under VR. Show loading splash screen. Use the one from the Oculus library if you're using Oculus, right? And then when you get to the end, you would hide. When you get to the other level, you would then hide it or something. Hide loading splash screen. Make sure you use the one that say loading and clear it off. I have a little sample project I got from Oculus Engineer that I can send you guys so you can have it as a test to play around with. And yeah, it's great for like giving mechanics before you get into your project. And the only other thing I like to do, and this is personally me, is to play around a little bit with depth. Right? I like to add in a little particle system. This ambient dust. It's just like people like, oh, they're just like little cats. You know, they're just like pawing at the particles that are floating around. And go inside of here and get the material. And because it's really dark, I'm going to make sure that it's in the emissive too. Right, and we can even maybe have a little bit of a glow. One call bright. Give it 2, save. And here again, it helps people figure out that this is a 3D experience, that it's not just a flat image, a 360 video or something like that. Now he's seeing them right now. Let's see. There they are. It might be a little much, but you get the idea. It's a little more fun to be inside of here. Like, oh wow, look at that. Cool. So let's go ahead and go to our level, and I'm going to talk a little bit about optimization, just so you guys are aware of what's available for you guys to like make it perform a little better. It really is when it hits 90 frames per second, it's a much better experience. Anything below 90 with Oculus, it'll do what's called reprojecting. It'll make it go to 45 and then try to just double up the frames, which is fine, but it's still not. You could tell when you hit 90, it's like a much more crisp image. I went ahead and went in Slack and gave you 2 little articles that in the documents folder that you can reference. They go into it in more detail. This one's a pretty long article. It's like 4 pages long. This one's a little bit more succinct, but they're just telling you how to do how to use the tools that are built in to the game engine. So let's go ahead and go to a more complex level and just take a quick look at those. We'll save all. And it was called minimal default. Another thing, you don't have to make an executable for your project, but it does run faster when you have an executable because you're not rendering the actual user interface of Unreal. The main thing to remember here is that you need to have your game default map. It needs to be the map that you want to start off on. So for us, we want to start off on loading level. Right? But then when I just open up my editor, I want it to be on minimal default because that's where I spend most of my time editing the project, right? But yeah, when you make it executable, make it loading level. And I can even show you like that process. Well, let's optimize it first, and then we'll make it executable. So it's going in minimal default. And the first thing I do is I look at polygon count. That's a huge one for us. Weird. It must be that there's multiple levels here. No. We'll just make it unlit for a second. Right. So here's our level. Oh, that's sickening. Okay. It's gone silent. And we're going to go to Window and Statistics. So what I have here is my primitive stats. And I'm going to jump right ahead to this thing called sum of tries or sum of triangles right here. And at the top, it tells you what is the total polygon count for your project. Let's try to keep this below 1 million for a tethered VR experience. If it's a mobile, it needs to be below 100,000, probably more like 75,000. Okay? And what we have here by being in the sum column is that not only do we have what the polygon count is for the object, but how many are using as well. So I have 32,000 triangles for my character Sporty Spice. There's 8 of them. So that actually ends up being a lot more. Wait. There you go. That math seems off. I have only 1 of them. Sorry. I have 1 of them. So it ends up being the same amount. But if I had 10 of these untitled actors, that adds up to 14. So you can really see when things are adding up that you might need to get rid of some of them or figure out how close you're getting to them and create different levels of detail for them. So primitive stats is a no-brainer to look at. The other one is texture. Texture shows you how big the dimensions of your texture are. If you're using nothing but 4K, 8K textures on objects that are really, really tiny, then you're kind of wasting a lot of disk space and you're wasting a lot of shader processing power. So it'll tell you like how much the current dimensions are. Like this object right here, this lamp, I'm really only using 256 by 256. So maybe I can scale down that texture if I'm having problems with shader complexity. Right? And it tells you how much space it takes. And when you're doing mobile development, you're like, oh, this texture is actually really big and it's making my applications too big to download. So some things, these are some places to debug some of that stuff. The next place to look is more GPU stuff. To get that, we're going to use the tilde button and go stat FPS, and then we see my frame rate. This is getting 60 frames per second. Okay, if we're targeting 90, this dictates everything in our project. We have to be trying to get 90. Okay, and then to see more into it, whether it's CPU bottlenecked or GPU bottlenecked, I can use another tilde and say stat unit. And that could tell me whether it's the GPU or the game, the CPU. The CPU things would be, like really complicated blueprints that are on event tick that are driving a lot of interactions like that. This seems to be more GPU bottlenecked, and more than likely it's because I have 72 lights that need to be built. All right, so This is one way of looking at it, but I'm seeing one general number. I don't know which one's the culprit. So I'm gonna go back to my tilde, and I'm gonna say profile GPU, and this opens up a way of me looking at just one frame, right? So I want to be looking at the thing that's really slowing down. And that's like the first way of finding out what is slowing your project down, is just by looking, and the frame rate will change when the thing that's really, really complicated is in frame. Then it's being rendered, and it will slow down, and you want to take a frame from that. And here we see that, let's see what we got. We have lights. Right here, I see that lighting with shadows, these three are taking up a 4 millisecond hit on my my project. So I'm able to actually find out what the objects are inside my project that are affecting things. More than likely, here again, baking this lighting would fix all that, or taking off the shadows. Yeah, see, there's shadows. If I took those off, that would go away. We're just looking at the average duration of things, right? This particle simulation seems to be very complicated, and it's taking up 11 milliseconds. That's almost my entire 90 frames right there. So I might have to take away some of the shader complexity. And another way of seeing shader complexity, and I think I did this last week a little bit, was showing you different optimization view modes. Right, so let's look at light complexity first. Here's those shadowed lights, right? They're all focused on here, and the center area is very bad. Blue is kind of good experience. So this is problematic for us. Right? When we see the target zone, is look at all these movable lights that have shadows. You could probably only have a couple movable lights in an entire project that are doing dynamic shadows and moving around. So for me, it might be better to, it's a blueprint, go in here, make them all static. Let's change all of them to static. File. Let's take a look. It's still going to be complex because we still need to build the lighting. And you'll see a thing in your taskbar called Swarm Agent right here. That's what's like doing all the ray casting to figure it all out. You see it's like processing. It's collecting photons. And it starts off slow, and then it'll start speeding up exponentially as it starts figuring out some calculations. But more than likely it'll take like 5 minutes, so I'm going to bypass it for right now. Plus I don't want to fix my project already, so that would be too easy. So I'm going to close this out, cancel my lighting build. Oh, there it goes. Stop. Alright. Then there's some other view modes that are quite nice. We have our stationary light overlap. That again tells us about if we moved these light blueprints back to stationary lights, it would tell us where that's problematic right there. And then shader complexity. Shader complexity is if I'm having like a lot of transparencies. Right, this whole transparent thing is pretty bad. These trees, a lot of transparency, that's causing some problems. I want to see how it is compared to how many polygons it is. That is called quad overdraw with shader complexity. You see these bushes are, really pushing the limits of the VR, maybe, comparatively. And then that's pretty much the main stuff. Light mass density doesn't really affect anything if you bake the lights. So anyway, that's some ways of like identifying problematic areas so that you can have the best user experience for your VR experience. So that's pretty much it for this demo. Is there anything else that it just gives you the tools to be able to research the right words? Now, if you think it's problematic, you're not sure how to fix it, you can just do a lot of Google searching and look on YouTube. There's some really in-depth around 30-minute long videos that show you how to go through all this. There's other external graphics profilers outside of Unreal. Intel makes a really robust one that actually has a lot more information than this stuff does, and it's kind of something you want to do before you go into the store. So the last thing I was saying was sometimes, or a lot of times, packaging your project will make it a lot faster because it's not rendering what's called Slate, the interface of Unreal. And just if you haven't tried, don't assume it's going to work because you might have a bunch of errors. So just give it a shot sometime. In the middle of your project. I'm going down to Package Project. And I'm going to do it for Windows 64-bit. Tell it where I want to do it. Let's do it to the desktop right now. And say selected. Now, if anyone's walking by and you want to impress them with your hacker skills, just like hit this output log, and it just looks really impressive. Just hacking. Broke into the FBI mainframe. You know how it is. Clickety click. And so this will be building to the desktop. And if you're somebody who likes bling, go to your project settings and go down to Windows. And this is where you can set custom splash screens. Makes your project look really pro, 600 by 200, and then custom game icons too, so that it can have your logo there. Simple, quick things you could do when you're like trying to figure out a blueprint problem. You're like, I can't figure it out. You're like, oh, let's crack open Photoshop or Microsoft Paint and make an icon for our project. And it'll just when people see it, like, ooh, okay, it's a real project. Okay. That's about it. I mean, obviously you can do it for all the platforms you're doing for. Mobile ones have a lot more different splash screens because of the differences of resolutions and stuff like that. And then if you're having problems, here's all the different features you can set in your engine for like rendering, what kind of anti-aliasing, and what kind of target frame rate. Right now I was only targeting doing a max of 60, therefore wasn't getting past 60. I have noticed that by clicking this use a fixed frame rate and doing 90, it's actually made a more performative piece. And all you're doing here with these project settings is you're configuring these initialization files. It's actually part of your folder structure of your project. I'll shortcut into my folder by going to Unreal and saying show me an Explorer. There we go. Here's my project. So we've seen the content, but in our config folder, which is next to it, there's these are the initialization files. They're actually just text files. And we'll see that, like, right before I came in here, I said use a fixed frame rate of 90, and look, there it is. It's been added into this initialization files. Every time you open up the engine, it's reading these files and doing these settings. So I can actually override this. If I close the engine and said my target whatever is 85, I back up, it would change the project settings. One thing that I always do in one of my projects, or all my projects for VR, is Unreal has a UE for best practices, VR best practices page. It's stuff that we've already talked about many times, like don't shake the camera, don't do weird things. What are the target frame rates? I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but what it does do is give us even better settings for optimizing our rendering. So I just copy these from here, and then I go into my INI file, hit enter a couple times, paste it in, and save. And now this is taking off a lot of like post-processing effects that really hit rendering hard that shouldn't be used, or the things that are superfluous for VR that we really can't see. But yeah, it's getting rid of lens flares and chromatic aberration and screen space reflections and a lot of other stuff that can be problematic for rendering. Of course, it won't take effect until I reopen the project that's already open and doing the stuff. Cool. So when you're making a build like this one is, just remember yellow is just a warning, but I do try to make sure that I get my warnings down to 0. This is at 76 warnings, and who knows, this might cause problems or it might not. It's almost done, so I might as well just wait for a second and see. Let's see. Alright, there it is. It's done. Let's close it off. And it's called Windows with no editor. Okay, I can easily just rename this Narrative VR 2018. Open up. That's what's called exe. And let's try it out. Cool. So those are executable particles in really shitty Backlight. And then Spacebar fades it out. And there we go. And I never make the lighting, so you have a package project with unbaked lights. Cool, but now we're rocking around. Can't get in there. Cool. Oh, another important thing is to say escape equals quit on the blueprints, because I can't get out of here unless I crash the project. Ooh, that's a special button. And I made a build for development, so I can still do all my console commands in here. Only when I do a build for release will it hide all these console commands. So I do that occasionally. Whenever I see Unreal projects in the store, I see if they made a shipping build, and you can like fuck around with the project, you know, through the console. But I'm hitting a solid 90 frames per second in my built project, so that setting really does take effect. So make sure you do that, and then otherwise Alt Tab and just close out this way. Cool. So I'll upload this probably by the end of today.